previously made a lesson on the so-called Cry Me a River lick, which means that you take the melody from the standard Cry Me a River and you apply that melody to your solo, so you use that as a lick to maneuver through the changes of a standard. And when I posted that video, I didn't remember what book that was from, and somebody pointed out which book, and it's this book. So thank you for that, and I got a copy, and it's called Elements of the Jazz Language for the Developing Improviser. So there is that lick, and there's another lick called the Gone But Not Forgotten lick, which I guess is another standard, which I'm not familiar with, to be honest. So I'm gonna cover that in this video, and before I do that, this is a good book. There's tons of stuff in here. I'm just gonna read you the chapters, maybe. Bear with me here. So some of the stuff he's covering in this book, it's by Jerry Coker. Is that how you pronounce his name? I'm not sure. Let's see here. So digital patterns, scalar patterns, the 7-3 resolution, bebop scales, which I've covered a lot, bebop lick, harmonic generalization, which is a great thing. I might cover that. Enclosure, sequence, something he calls cache, which is interesting. The Crimea River lick and the Gone But Not Forgotten lick. And there's much more in this book. So I wouldn't say it's the best book for the advanced player, but for somebody who knows how to play the instrument, but maybe jazz, improv, and especially bebop is a bit of a mystery. This is one of those books that can really help you with figuring out the mystery, as it were. So also there's transcriptions of a Michael Brecker solo and a Sonny Stitt solo, I think, and it comes with the CD. If people use CDs anymore, I'm not sure. But anyway, let's move on to the Gone But Not Forgotten lick. So I'm sure you've all heard it. If we're in G minor, you start on the 9th, then the flat 3, the major 7. So it's kind of like you're surrounding the root there, and then landing on the 5th. So that's basically the lick. You can do many things with it. You can manipulate it. You can move it rhythmically or harmonically. You can change notes around. You can play stuff into the lick, or you could continue the lick, which would just be the arpeggio. So if I have a G minor loop, maybe a little bit of a pickup note, or even the arpeggio. And in the book there are many examples of recordings. That's another great thing about this book. He gives you examples of where people play this lick, and you can listen to the recordings and hear how they kind of change it around and how different players use it differently. So we could also connect it to the bebop scale. So that would be a C Mixolydian bebop scale that works over G minor, right? I've covered that in previous lessons. Okay, so it also works obviously over a C7, because G minor and C7 share the same notes, right? G Dorian is the same as C Mixolydian. Now all of a sudden it's the 13th, flat 7, sharp 11, 13, 5, 9. Obviously, we should learn it in many different places on the fretboard if we're a guitar player. And I just see a bit out of tune here. So same thing here, you can play the bebop scale. Or maybe up. Sorry. There it is. Just connecting it with bebop scales or arpeggios. Okay, so it also works over E minor 7 flat 5 would be pretty much the same thing. And altered, so let's this would be F sharp altered. So this is an F sharp altered. So that would be the sharp 9, the third, root, sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 5. So the Cry Me a River Lick works over major 7 chords as well. This one is not as good over major 7. Would be, I guess, a B flat major 7. Yeah, maybe, why not? Not as great over major 7 chords. So in that sense, it's a little bit more limiting than the Cry Me a River Lick. But anyhow, it works over minor chords and dominant chords and altered dominant chords and minor 7 flat 5 chords. So that gives you a lot. So if we have a C minor blues, which I was jabbing over at the beginning of this video. So if we have a C minor blues, C altered, F minor, C minor, to A flat 7, G altered. That's the C minor one, and then transpose it to F, to back to C, then A flat, half step up, adding bebop scales. So I guess the idea is to mix this in with stuff that you already know and mix it in with the scales and the arpeggios. It's a good way to break out of the, because just practicing bop scales, for example, can be kind of boring. So mixing in stuff like this, like I call it jazz idioms, like the phrases we all know and either love or hate, right? That's the Crimea River lick. I'll post a link to that video below. And then now we have this one. But you can throw that in kind of into your bop scales and arpeggios and all of that stuff, right? So then you kind of, that's kind of how you develop a jazz language, right? So I've said it many times, but just because you know this stuff doesn't mean you're going to sound good. This is just very basic stuff that will help you know where the important notes are. So it's not, the idea is not that you go to a jazz show and everything you're doing is, I mean, it's obviously kind of silly, right? But this will help you find the notes, the important notes, the notes that kind of outline and define that harmony. That's why those phrases have kind of survived, and that's why so many people use them. Is because it's kind of the language. We use some phrases more than other phrases because they're more important, or I don't know. So again, be careful with this stuff because it's very cliche, and if you overdo it, it's gonna sound like all you're doing is cliche, cliche, cliche. But it's a great thing to practice, and so that you get the bebop language under your fingers. And again, strongly recommending this book. It's a mouthful, this title, Elements of the Jazz Language for the Developing Improviser by Jerry Coker. Pretty inexpensive, it wasn't expensive and easy to find. Some of these books are very hard to find, but this one was pretty easy to find. And tons of licks and examples in here. Right, so it's page after page of different variations of these licks and bop scales and how to connect them, and yeah, tons of stuff. So get the book and enjoy, and I shall see you next time.